In this third example, we have a list of information for our fiscal year ended May 31st. We have expenses, general revenues, program revenues, and then we even have a special item. And what we've been asked to do is take this information and create a statement of activities. So I have this statement of activities right here, and we're going to look at, so what we have is our expenses versus money that we have received in for various things. So first we have the different expenses, so culture and recreation, our general government, health and sanitation, interest and long-term debt, and public safety. We're going to bring that different stuff down. So we have our general government, public safety, health and sanitation, culture and recreation, and our interest on long-term debt. So those were our different expenses. Then we're going to have a total here for our different, we get our total expenses from the different activities that we have. Then we have what are our charges for services. So what different funds did we get in charges for services, and you can see that we have different things here. So we have general government charges for services here of $3,775. We have public safety charges for services of $1,438. We do not have our health and sanitation charges for services of $6,734. Culture and recreation charges for services of $4,794. And then interest at long-term debt does not go here. The earnings from interest go somewhere else. So we have this here. Okay. Then we have our operating grants. If any funds received operating grants from the state, from the county, from the federal government, and we see that the general government received an operating grant of $1,012. Public safety has an operating grant of $1,568. And our culture and rec has an operating grant of $2,940. Then we have capital grants. So remember, the difference between operating grants and capital grants is capital grants are specifically allocated for capital purchases only, where operating grants can be used for any operating activity. So capital grant for capital investments only. And when we look through this information here, we see that the only capital grant we had was public safeties for $74. Okay, so in this last account, what we do is expenses minus revenues. So this seems opposite. Normally we'd do revenues minus expenses and see what's left, but on this form we do expenses minus revenues to see how much it costs in different governmental activities. So we're going to take expenses minus charges minus operating grants minus capital grants. I'm going to copy that down, and I'm going to change that and put a negative in the front. Nope. Playing with the formula to see how I want it to be. There we go. So now we have the results. So we take, I'm going to follow this crossed. So we have our different things. So we see that we had expenses, more expenses than program revenues. Now we're going to look at what our general government revenues are, and if we have positive change, we can see that our program expenses were more than just general program revenues. So we pay with other methods. So we have property taxes. It says here that we received property taxes of $65,560. We have unrestricted grants and contributions of $1,440, and then we had investment earnings of $2,350. So what we're going to look at is what was our total general revenues just for our general fund. So we had $71,350. We then have that special item, which is the gain on a sale. Our total revenue of general plus special items is $75,518. Okay, so our change in net position is the difference between our total revenues and our total expenditures. Okay, so we had total general revenues of $75,518. We're going to be plus, since this is a negative number, of the $61,153. We have a change in net position of $14,365. Then what we're going to look at was what was the net position, and this is actually on June 1st, 2022. So our fiscal year ends on May 31st. So it starts on June 1st. So what was our net position at the beginning of last year? So if it has that information, which I didn't put on here, but I will tell you what that number is. So it was $1,810. So our net position then at the end of the fiscal year is the sum of those two numbers. So that's currently what we have in revenues over expenses. Okay. Our last example is going to be the other kind of statement that Chapter 3 introduced.